Welcome to Roaming with Restless Women, real talk with wise, dynamic women leaders. I'm Julie Noonan, your host, CEO, and founder of Intuitive Wisdom Coaching, and I'm living my dream life. I live and work in my RV, coaching senior women leaders as they navigate corporate politics, family drama, and personal goals to live their own dream lives. These women are restless. They are never done seeking new opportunities, learning, and ways to create value in the world. If you'd like to apply to be a guest, stick around to the end of the show and I'll let you know how. So let's go. Hi, and welcome back to Roaming with Restless Women. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Lauri Smith. Lauri is an executive coach, and I'm going to read a little of her story because she is just a fascinating individual. So, Lauri tells a story of when she was 7 years old. Her mom found her in the backyard acting like Cindy Brady. I can relate, although I was Marcia always, with her hair pinned up in curled pigtails. She immediately took Lauri to an acting class. She describes acting and theater as being her first spiritual zone. The feeling of flow, the feeling of time standing still. 20 years later, she was working in an office job during the day and doing theater at night, and working way too much overall. Every time a show ended, she would go through a post-show depression when she went back to work, to the quote-unquote real job. She was keeping herself small, doing what she thought other people wanted of her, and being who she thought they wanted her to be. So she embarked on a quest to find out how to speak authentically and powerfully when it mattered the most. And she thought that meant being in theater full time. But the universe had something else in store. She later discovered leadership and what leadership means. And it means being present in the moment and accepting what is, while also moving forward with purpose to create the change you want to see in the world. And I have to tell you guys, all of this speaks to my heart because I'm also a theater person, although I was always backstage. And because I never could memorize the lines, I said them different every night, drove my theater person, my director crazy. But also, she is now an executive coach and she runs her own company. So that's another thing that I have obviously in common with Lauri. So welcome, Lauri, hailing from San Francisco. I love it. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you, I'm telling you. So the first thing I always like to start off with is tell me about how you started in your now career.
I went to graduate school thinking I would do theater all the time, like you mentioned, and came out of graduate school, had a part-time job working as a personal assistant to someone using the executive assistant skills. And I was teaching part-time in theater at a college, a community college. And a woman about my age came up to me and said, "You're different. The other teachers, the other instructors are still using the professor style, like they are professing their knowledge down to the rest of us. When you trust yourself, your style is more coach-like, and you look like you're reading people's minds, and you're actually drawing the best performances out of my classmates. You wouldn't know that because you're not in class with them." And then she said, when you don't trust yourself and you try to do it the way you think you're supposed to, it's really not working for you.
Wow.
And
Wow. Ha!
yeah, yeah. It was, I did not know what coaching was at that point outside of sports. So, in addition to doing theater, I had played basketball, volleyball, soccer. I knew what that kind of a coach was. I had even done some coaching myself. And I could tell that wasn't what she was talking about. And it was one of those moments where time was slowing down behind her and her face almost looked like it was in a fun mirror. So I said, "Tell me more." And I went and signed up for my first life coaching class within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And I remember within 15 minutes of that first coaching class, I turned to the woman next to me and said, I think I just found the final piece of what I'm here to do. And she went, Oh, what is that? And I said, I can't answer you with my brain yet.
Yeah. It sounds like you're a lot like me. I go gut first. I get the feeling, it just something inside me clicks.
Yeah.
And it is like that for intuitive people a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
When I
Yeah.
listen, it is very much like, it's a gut feeling, it's an energy feeling.
Mhm.
And that's what I had on that day. And then I went through their leadership program. And when I was about to do the coaching certification, I called up my old favorite boss from the executive assistant days and said, Can I coach you? I need to make myself a little nervous. And I really respect you. And I feel like it would make me nervous.
Mhm.
It did. And it was breaking through the nervousness to an amazing coaching session. And he was an entrepreneur. So he gave me advice. Number one, you need to like 7x what you said you were going to charge, especially if you're going in organizations. And the second piece of entrepreneurial advice was it would be great if you had a niche, something to get
Mhm.
you in the door. And he said, What about something with fitness? That's all the rage. So this is
Yeah.
2008.
Oh yeah.
That's all the rage these days. And you were always very fit. And I went, You know what I could do is I could bring together theater with coaching and leadership and do public speaking and leadership coaching and leadership presence, executive presence, that kind of a niche. And I've been fine tuning that and fine tuning that and fine tuning that since 2008 more and more. And that's kind of the series of dominoes that seemed the most important in this moment that got tipped over to lead to where I am today.
So the do you know what your red thread is? For instance, do you know what value that you hold the most dear that has really followed you through all of your career and your life, actually?
I do now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the name of my company, if I were to say it in two words,
Mm-hmm.
voice matters.
Yes.
When I went through the leadership program that I went through, it was clear to everyone else. It actually felt not clear to me. And I remember saying, what is it's called a stake in that program.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, What is it? I don't know. And she said, It's clear as day to everyone else. And I said, Okay, what is it? And she said, Voice is vital for all leaders. I would say now it's even beyond leadership. I believe that speaking, using our voices, is a spiritual journey, just like health, relationships, money. And it's an opportunity and a way that we are raising consciousness or not, staying the same, staying in the old. And that has been there. And when I say voice, I am very drawn to fifth chakra, our literal speaking voices. And there is something that's been there my whole life, including creativity. I get very, I'm still an actor, I'm a director, and I I believe it's best to awaken the creativity of the individuals involved in a show or the individual speaker, and then to help them shape that rather than to come into rehearsals having decided all the blocking ahead of time or that kind of strategizing. You're really kind of treating actors more like puppets than like clay that you're helping to shape. It's not my style. That's part of what that person was talking about as a teacher and as a director. I help unleash everyone's creativity. And then, yes, as the director, you do make the final decisions. You make the final decisions and then you let go and you let people go out on stage every single night once the show has opened and do it their own way. And usually, when you've empowered them that much, it means they find some things that are even better than
Oh,
when you released your your outside eye, your critical eye. They find things that are even better as the show runs for however long it runs.
I think I too am a director, um, or was a director way back when. Um, and that was one of the things that I really, really probably most enjoyed is once once one of the actors embodies or has that um, persona kind of in their DNA, then when they become that person or when they get into that flow, as you say, working with them and asking them questions and creating more richness together means so much more, I
Yeah.
think, than just reading the script per se,
Yeah.
and never getting into it. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a vibrance and an aliveness when their creativity is unleashed that when I'm an actor, I've worked very hard when a director has an idea and they, I remember um, in my 20s, I was dating someone who had more of what I would call an outside in directorial approach.
Yeah.
And at the time, he knew me as like hating it. And, it's still not my favorite. And I'm in my 50s now. At some point in my 30s, I worked with him again. We were not dating by that point. He hadn't directed me in a long time. And I remember a day when he was like, oh, I know you're going to hate this, but I just can't figure out how else to say it. Can you try laughing on that line? And I went, yeah, because he wasn't micromanaging every single moment
Mhm.
of the show. He asked me to try something that was a little bit more of an outside in path with one moment. But
Mhm.
he also didn't give me a line reading. So I went and, tried like, I'll laugh this way, I'll laugh that way, I'll laugh as if it means this, I'll laugh as if this is why I'm laughing. And then all of a sudden, after like try number 7, we both looked at each other and went, that's it.
That's it. Yes.
So he was doing outside in and still giving me the creative freedom to play.
So how does that translate into your coaching practice?
Well, I read the bodies of the speaking coaches. I have some expertise of body, breath, and energy that comes from the theater. And yet I'm always helping them to clarify their vision. What is the impact that they want to have? Asking them questions and then mirroring back what they've said. And then every once in a while, I believe your impact would be stronger if you took a pause in between this slide and that slide. That's more directorial of, hey, this is something I'm seeing out here. I don't think it's landing the way you're wanting it to. I think it would land and have the impact that you're wanting if you adjusted how you're doing it. And I help them to come alive. I help them to remove the soul suckers, the inner critics, and protector parts that are actually shutting down their creativity so that they can answer for themselves. What is your vision? What is the impact that you want to have? And then have an instrument that can help them have that.
Wow, that's amazing. So who is describe to me one of your hardest cases?
Hmm. Hardest cases.
Not that not there's nothing, I'm not saying like somebody
Yeah.
that was obstinate or wrong or but
Yeah.
one that it took you a while to get to that kernel.
Yeah, the one that popped into my mind was an executive working in a corporation. And these days I tend to work more with people where it's their mission.
Uh-huh.
They're not working for someone else. And because the connection to an intention and what is the impact that you want to have is sometimes an easier road. And
Yeah.
this was back before I got that kind of clarity. It was a much more left-brained leading person, much more corporate. And I use words like energy all the time. So it was challenging and it was also a gift. Every time I've worked with
Mhm.
somebody who's a little bit of a stretch in terms of audience, where I say something like energy and eventually they ask, I need you to use a different word, or I need you to tell me how to do that because I don't understand what you're saying. I don't speak in
Right.
the language of energy and intuition every single day. And I will frequently talk about hugging the room energetically.
Yes.
And he wasn't really getting it. His soul suckers and inner critics were playing defense against me a lot of the time. And then I started using language that he was using back to him rather than repeatedly saying energy or hug the room. I started trying to find ways to say everything back the way he was saying it to me, which is now in all of my corporate engagements. This is standard. By the end, I'm going to use their words unless they've fallen in love with mine. And he looked at me at one point, and this huge aha came across his face. And he said, "So you're talking about being intentional with my energy?" And I said, "Yes." And he, well, why didn't you just say that in the first place? So I now do that. There is a difference if you're
Mhm.
in a meeting room that's one of those big long tables,
Oh, yes.
or you are teaching a yoga class. When you're in one of those meetings around a big long table, if you are intending to talk to the person at the other end of the table and everyone in between, you got to hug the room, or you need to be intentional with your energy and make it include that person. If, let's say, the person sitting two people away from you did not get something done that they were supposed to, most leaders with heart involved don't want to shame that person in front of the room.
No. Mm-mm.
So being intentional means you actually pull your energetic bubble in and you hug that person and say, let's schedule some time to talk about this when the meeting is over. And then you expand your energetic bubble back out so that you're not shaming that person. In a yoga
Exactly.
class, one of the ways that it shows up is if someone is pregnant and you're giving an adjustment for the pregnant person, great yoga instructors will be talking about knees and keeping them safe to the whole room. And then you'll hear and feel them, don't do the twisting
Zoned in.
pose,
Yeah.
do this instead. So if you know what you're listening for, you hear it. If you don't, if you're not me, basically you just, that wasn't for me. And you don't even listen to the instruction that's for the probably pregnant or could have a back injury. Usually
Right.
I'm like, oh, she's probably pregnant. I'm
Yeah.
probably not supposed to be noticing this, but I do. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's terrific. That's terrific. And so, how do you, what is your methodology like when you first engage with a new leader? And how do you get them to recognize what they really want work with, or do they come in thinking that they know, and maybe it's not that?
Yeah. For most of the time when I work with people, they have an inkling.
Hmm.
And in the corporate contracts, there's what does that person want out of it? And then oftentimes they'll do a 360, a verbal 360 in my case, because of the voice, so that we can hear and feel the resonance. So they'll be working on what other people say they should work on, as well as what they know intuitively they want or need to work on. And a lot of times, one of the early sessions for me is helping them to understand that they're the same thing.
Okay.
If they're wanting them to work on executive presence, the bridge that I help is for the average person, they think executive presence is do it the way I do it. That's not what it is. There are
Right.
8 billion people on the planet with 8 billion different flavors of charisma. And the way to unleash executive presence is not to mimic your boss, it's to help find your own. And then your boss will be blown away thinking that you gave them what they were asking for
Absolutely.
when you're giving them
Oh,
the
I love that.
essence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially when you see curriculum based on, okay, let's teach you how to have executive presence. that curriculum focuses on things that may or may not help that individual person bring out their true executive presence.
Yeah,
And I really wish we could stop cookie cuttering everything,
me too.
especially leadership. My goodness, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Cookie cutter is not going to help change the world.
No.
Most of the cookie cutter speaking programs, I knew this intuitively, and then I went and actually looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them were formed during different waves of the industrial era. So
Yes.
they were created for everyone to say the same things, wear the same outfits, look the same, use the same words, use the same gestures. They were not about transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Transformation is you embody your presence with your words, your clothing, your outfits, your presence, your
Mm-hmm.
fingerprint on humanity.
True. What just occurred to me as you were talking is I think social media, it's a blessing and a curse depending on who you talk to. But one thing that I find very refreshing about it is that um, a lot of people who use social media feel freer to let go and be their creative selves. So much creativity out there.
Mhm.
And the ones that go viral are the ones that whose creativity has struck a chord in other people that, oh, that's different, that's unique, that's a great way to phrase it, or there's just usually something a little different. And that's
Mhm.
what creativity is all about. Innovation and
Yeah.
creativity is difference. It's
Yeah.
not sameness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for years, I did not do anything around speaking and selling because the old cookie cutter speak to sell
Yes.
formulas rubbed me the wrong way. And then I realized that I have a belief that at its best, selling is a moment of magnetism. If I'm aligned with myself and I'm embodying my one of a kind creativity and my one of a kind presence, it's like I'm tuned in to my radio frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I invite someone to come work further with me. And there's a magnetism there. If it is
Mm-hmm.
aligned and right for us to work together, they're going to be drawn toward me. If not, it's going to feel like magnets turned backwards, where they might love all the words coming out of my mouth and they're just feeling that it's a no. And they go find their speaking coach to work with where they do feel that moment of magnetism. And that's happening way before the selling moment. It's happening when we go on social media as
Yes.
ourselves. People are drawn to pay attention to our content, or they start listening to our content and they kind of go, just don't think that's my person, and they
Right.
keep moving.
And the neat thing about it is once you learn and get centered in yourself, you're okay with that
Yeah,
because you're not for everybody.
yeah,
So, the whole sell, 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 it
yeah,
rubs me the wrong way too. So I totally get that. Um, could you share with me a little bit more about one of the big transitions you talked about when you were 7, and that was your first spiritual kind of awakening? Tell
mm-hmm.
me about a couple of the other ones that and how that changed what you were doing and how you were thinking about yourself.
Yeah. The next big one that comes to mind was in my favorite acting class ever. It was the Sideways Acting Studio in San Francisco. It was an intimate master class, so it was 12 people at the time. And most of the time when you worked, you would get up there with a partner or with 3 other people. So the attention on you was divided.
Mm-hmm.
On this one particular day, he did a short stack, and I was up there all by myself with people sort of shouting things in from the audience. And I kept pulling myself together and putting on my jaw tension and the armor in front of my heart and my I'm fine face in between these little vignettes. And something that you said earlier reminded me, it was as if I kept trying to return to being the me that I thought other people still needed me to be in between. And he said, whatever that is you're doing, stop doing that. I said, I'm not that comfortable having everyone's eyes on me. He said, then you've picked a strange set of careers for yourself.
Yeah.
Part of you wants this, part of you knows you're meant to be here.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of went through all of my own soul suckers and my inner teenager and all my inner protectors. And I deeply trusted him and this safe space that he held. So I went back into the exercise. I was releasing the jaw tension. I was softening in front of my heart. I would be laughing when it was inappropriate for the character to be laughing and just let it move into what was true for me and true for the scene. And when the exercise was over, I looked out at my classmates and it was like I could see and feel what kind of day every single one of them was having. And I now say it was my first moment of oneness that lasted beyond the acting. I'd had them in sports. I'd had them where you have an experience on stage and you come off stage and you kind of don't remember what happened because you were so in it.
Yes.
And this was, I'm having that feeling that we are all connected and I can feel your heart and the acting is over. That was another one. And then,
Wow.
I'll pause before I go on to the second one,
Ooh,
see if there's anything else you want to ask about.
that's goosebumps. That's a goosebumps moment right there.
Yeah.
Because I totally have had those kinds of experiences, not on the stage as an actress,
Mm-hmm.
but on this quote unquote stage, as a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a trainer for many, many years, or a facilitator.
Yeah.
Is when the day is done, there's been so much learned and so much progress made that you forget how long, or you even forget what happened here,
Yeah.
because it's great. They've taken on the ownership themselves.
Yeah.
They own it now. They
Yeah.
own their experience. I love that. Okay, so
Yeah.
I got to hear the next one then.
The next one was in graduate school. So I did leave my corporate job, went to graduate school for theater, and I was playing Hecate in Macbeth. She's a goddess character connected to the three witches. She's often cut because it's one scene, and if you're looking to cut things, a lot of people cut her. This director did not cut her. It was a theater that had an inner above that's raised above everyone else.
Okay.
And she had this idea to have this beautiful mask made and to do the character in this mask. When you work with a mask, you generally want a beautifully made, handcrafted artisan mask. It's like you are channeling you into the mask and the character is coming out the other side. So, in an ideal world, you have a long time to bond with and learn how to walk and learn how to speak as that
Mm,
character. Ours was delayed. We got it, I think, about a week, 5 days before opening night.
mm,
I'd had one day with it with her. I'd started to have a movement. I had not said a word, I hadn't made any sounds. And she came up to me in tech, which is when you add the lights and the sounds, and it's usually very stop and start while you fix things. It's not even really about the acting at that point.
right.
And she came up to me and said, it's okay if you just want to move around the space to all of the places that you're blocked in the mask and not speak. And I fast forwarded in my mind and I thought, I can either do this now with about 40 people watching, or I can do this with 200 people, 250 on opening night. I'm gonna I'm gonna just inhale with the mask on and start to make the sound of the first word and see what happens. And the first
Mhm.
word was have, and I'm up in the inner above, and the three young undergraduate, I was a grad student, the three young, like 19-year-old undergraduate witches are down on the normal platform, and I inhale and I go,
Oh my.
have. And I did
Oh.
like slow motion. The scene probably took, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes because I just was, something was happening. I was finding the voice of the character. And when the scene was over, I had it. My best friend in grad school came up to me and said, "That was incredible." And that is, it's, it's a courageous moment. It's an authentic moment. It's a
Yes.
finding your voice moment. And for my work with speakers, I feel like those two moments are key to unleash our own charisma. We have to allow ourselves to be seen, and then they feel seen and heard and understood. And finding our soul's voice and then channeling it into what am I here to do on this planet, for a lot of my clients feels as vulnerable and earth shattering as that moment of finding the goddess's voice. And it's just
Mm,
occurring to me as I'm saying this to you now. I think part of it is that I was playing a goddess. There was a huge amount of power and energy moving. And
mm,
I feel like a lot of times that's what's happening with the change makers that I'm here to work with, is they're blown away by the magnitude of their own power and their energy, and they've been keeping themselves small, and letting it out can feel like something's going to explode. Either I'm going to explode, the people receiving it are going to explode. And in reality, the only thing that explodes is the things that are holding all of humanity back. The people don't explode.
wow. That reminded me of a time when I was actually in therapy. Um, and my therapist and I were talking about the anger that I was holding inside of me. And she used an exercise, very tactical exercise that she hoped would pull that anger out of me and allow me to be free of it so that, I could find my soul's voice, be
Mm-hmm.
myself, etc. And what I found in that exercise was that at that time in my life, I just couldn't. It was part of my defense mechanism, that
Mm-hmm.
anger. And I actually said to her, if I ever let out the anger that is in me, I will probably kill someone. And I'm afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, audience, I'm not there anymore. But when you were describing that, um, that allowing and that charisma and those magical moments where it all
Mm-hmm.
comes together, um, it can be very, very, very scary. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just takes a little bit more maturity. There are times in your life when I think you're more open than other times to
Yeah.
learning things about yourself.
Yeah. And there's huge empowerment in taking it in your timing and your pace. With clients, I've had people who had a magical moment that was similar to mine, where it's like a 1 day moment and then you retain it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have also had clients where it's a 5% stretch, 5% stretch, a 5%, and the slowness, and they get to go at their pace
Mm-hmm.
is what creates, it's like 10,000 magical moments that they're in charge of, all added together,
Right.
creates it.
I think a lot of times one thing that coaches do that I think is a mistake is wait for those huge cathartic moments and expect that of their clients. And some of the most beautiful moments that I've witnessed have been very small,
Yeah.
um, but very impactful on that person.
Yeah.
But it's not earth shattering, life altering. It is just a small realization, something that they didn't even know before.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
makes it fun, isn't it?
The surprise and the variety and the
Yes.
differences. And you even reminded me one of the biggest breakthroughs one of my clients ever had was in between sessions. It was,
Yes.
I said something at the end, like, boy, I feel like I've been battling your soul suckers a lot during this call. 2 weeks pass. I'm actually, because I've got my own soul suckers, especially back then, thinking, boy, he's going to come back and he's going to fire me.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, that created an aha off in his life where I wasn't even there for the juicy part of the transformation. I just spoke something that was true in the moment. And for whatever reason, something told me to say it that day.
Yeah.
Clients have inner critics, and there are days where it feels like they're fighting, there's more resistance.
Oh,
And
yes.
that day I said it, and apparently I was supposed to, quote unquote, because he took it and went off on his own and came back very, very different. He did end up quitting working with me soon after, but it wasn't the like, oh, I suck, so I got fired. It
Right.
was he went off, he had a bunch of breakthroughs, and then I don't know, some months later, he was complete
He
with
was
our part
done.
of the journey
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult sometimes as a coach. When it is time for it's almost like letting go of a baby bird out of the nest or whatever. But
Yeah.
it can be difficult if you're not your own self, if you're not centered in your own capability. It When it is time to let someone go, your ego can really hinder that process
Yeah.
if you're not
Yeah.
careful. Yeah.
Yeah. And the more I pay attention to intuition, which is
Mhm.
where we started, the more I, two things can be true. I usually feel both I will miss them and this is absolutely the right time. We can both feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, so I have three questions. First of all, is there anything else that you would like to share that I haven't asked about before we move into my three final questions?
Nothing comes to mind. I'm ready
Okay.
for your three questions.
Oh, they're spicy. No, I'm just kidding. I just like to have these three at the end because one day my hope is that I'll be able to take all of these and compile um, almost a group wisdom um, video or something that will inspire women who are coming up behind us.
Hmm.
That's what I will hope to do with it. Okay, so I'll ask you to close your eyes and describe the picture that appears in your mind when I say wise woman. When you get that picture, open your eyes and describe.
Hmm. It's during coaching school, there was an image of myself in the future, and
Mm,
it was that woman with gray hair.
there you go.
Yeah, very strong, muscular, owning the gray hair. Yeah.
It, you know what? It is probably one of the most vulnerable things a woman can do is just to go gray. It's amazing. I
Yeah,
did it. So yeah,
I did too.
you look
Yeah.
beautiful. So I love
Thank
your
you.
hair. All right. So the second question, where do you like to roam?
I love to roam in the woods. I used to live in Berkeley, and there's this national park there called Tilden Park. And when I lived there, I knew every inch of it because I would hike it multiple times a week. Now I roam in Redwood National Forest up in Guerneville, California. Usually with my husband, we go for walks there.
It's beautiful up there. That's one of the places we were not able to go this year. Um, and we probably won't be able to go next year, but that's on the list. The whole West Coast, maybe even up to Alaska, is our next adventure in 2026.
Fun.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Last question, what makes you restless in a good way?
when creativity is being suppressed consciously or unconsciously. So if there is a director who is doing a lot of prescribing and we're not, it's like, you take 3 steps and you're being told how to move,
Oof. Yeah.
it becomes stronger and stronger. And years ago, there were a couple of instances with public speaking where I was restless and it was a clue that this is what I'm here to do. One was somebody who had a background in theater, but not so much with the voice,
Mhm.
who was kind of telling people how to do it. And it was the like, do it my way. And I wanted to stand up. And I realized in that moment, he isn't actually doing any harm. He's just also not particularly helpful. It's kind of feeling inept. And I went, well, it's his program. And I have a respect value. So if he crosses over into doing harm, you bet you know what, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to stop it. But it's just inept. It's just not working, but it's not my program. And there was another one where there was no harm happening. This one was actually earlier. There was so much beautiful stuff, and there was a piece missing that I saw of hugging the whole room. And same sort of moment, I went, yeah, he just doesn't have the whole piece. So I'm feeling restless, but it's not a restless that means stand up and fill in the gaps right now during his event. It means park it in the back of your mind and let it guide you forward. Those are restless in a good way.
Right. And I think when restlessness um, it can be used when you learn something from it, like you just mentioned, then that gets put in our filing cabinet back there. That the next time when we do have an opportunity to influence or make a change in a direction that would be even better for that person, then we have that in the back of our head to help out with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Lauri, thank you so much. Tell us how we can find you.
The best way to find me is to go to my website. It's voice-matters.com. And then if you're into the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube are down at the bottom.
Perfect. I will put those in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next time. Thank you, Lauri.
Thank you.
Julie Noonan here. Thank you so much for listening to Roaming with Restless Women. If you're a successful senior woman leader who would like to be on this program, please visit podcast.intuitivewisdomcoach.com. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this episode on social media and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they mean a lot to me, my team, and most importantly, my restless guests. As a special gift to you, our listeners, I offer a free one-on-one 15-minute breakthrough session. Bring a problem and experience how coaching works to see if it could be of value to you. Sign up for an available time on my website, intuitivewisdomcoach.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.